The night my house burned down, I thought losing everything was the worst thing that could happen. I had no idea my own daughter would make it even worse. Before we begin, a huge thank you to all of you. We've officially hit 500 subscribers. It's a small milestone but a big deal for us. And now our eyes are set on the 1,000 subscribers goal. To help us get there, please hit the like button. Subscribe so you never miss a story. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and how you're doing. Your support truly encourages us and keeps this channel going now. Let's jump into the story. My name is Carol. I'm 70 years old, and until recently, I believed family was something you could always count on. That belief died the same night my house did. I stood outside my daughter Jessica's apartment with a small suitcase in my hand. Smoke still clung to my clothes. My heart was racing not from the fire, but from fear. I had nowhere else to go. When Jessica opened the door, I expected concern. Maybe panic. Maybe relief that I was alive. Instead, she looked irritated. "What happened?" she asked, glancing at my bag. "My house burned down," I said quietly. "I just need a place to stay for a few days, until I figure things out." She sighed like I had asked for a favor instead of help. Behind her, her husband Ryan laughed from the couch. "That couch I paid for. That apartment I had helped keep afloat for years." "Mom," Jessica said, crossing her arms, "this isn't a shelter." The words hit harder than the fire ever could. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply nodded, turned around, and walked away. But as I reached the sidewalk, something inside me snapped. I pulled out my phone and called the bank. "I want to cancel every automatic transfer," I said. "All payments going to Jessica and Ryan, starting immediately." The woman on the line asked me to confirm. I did. The next morning, my phone showed dozens of missed calls. But to understand why that decision mattered so much, you need to know this wasn't a sudden betrayal. I raised Jessica alone. Her father left before she was born. I worked nonstop cleaning houses, taking extra jobs, skipping meals so she could have a better life. She used to hug me like I was her whole world. Somewhere along the way, that love turned into entitlement. And I didn't see it until it was almost too late. Because the truth about how long my daughter had been using me beyond what I overheard days later changed everything. I thought I knew about her. The calls didn't stop. My phone vibrated on the small motel nightstand every few minutes, name flashing again and again, followed by Ryan's. I let it ring. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to fix their problems. By noon, the messages started. "Mom, why did the money stop? This better be a mistake. We have bills, call me now." I stared at the screen, my hands steady, my heart strangely calm. For 8 years, I had been quietly paying their rent, their car payments, their credit cards. Every time they said, "Just this once," I believed them. I wanted to believe them. After my husband died, Jessica became my whole world. I worked past retirement age because she said she needed help. When Ryan lost his job, I covered everything temporarily. Temporary turned into years. I told myself it was love. But sitting alone in that motel room, I finally saw it for what it was: control. That evening, I answered one call. "Are you happy now?" Jessica snapped before I could speak. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? The bank called us. I lost my house," I said calmly. "I stood outside your door with nowhere to go." "That's not our fault," she shot back. "You should have had insurance." "I did," I replied. "But that wasn't the point." She scoffed. "You're overreacting. You always do." Something about the way she said always made my stomach tighten. "I just needed my daughter," I said. "Not money, not space. Just you." Silence. Then Ryan's voice came on the line. "Look, Carol, let's be practical. Once you get your insurance payout, you can help us again. We'll forget this whole thing." That's when I realized they weren't worried about me at all. They were worried about losing their safety net. I hung up without saying another word. 2 days later, I went back to the remains of my house with the insurance adjuster. Most of it was ash and blackened wood, but the fire investigator was still there, walking slowly through the debris. Was anyone else inside the house before the fire? He asked. I shook my head. Just me. He frowned slightly, then pointed near the back door. That's strange. The fire started here. And this doesn't look accidental. My chest tightened. What do you mean? He hesitated. There are signs of My mind raced. The back door had been unlocked, and the last person who had a spare key was Jessica. That night, as I lay awake listening to traffic outside the motel, a memory surfaced, something Jessica had said weeks earlier. Laughing, almost casually, that old house of yours is more trouble than it's worth. At the time, I hadn't thought twice about it. Now, the words echoed differently, and for the first time, a terrifying question formed in my mind. What if losing my home wasn't an accident at all? I didn't tell anyone what the investigator had said. Not the motel clerk. Not my friends from church. And definitely not Jessica. But the thought followed me everywhere, like smoke I couldn't wash off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the back door of my house slightly open, the way it never should have been. 3 days after the fire, the insurance company called. The claim is being reviewed, the agent said carefully. Because the fire may have been intentionally set, there will be a delay. A delay meant weeks, maybe months. I thanked her and hung up, my hands shaking. Without the payout, I had nothing but a small savings account, one Jessica knew about. One she had access 2 years ago when I trusted her completely. That same afternoon, I decided to stop hiding. I drove to Jessica's apartment. When she opened the door, her smile vanished. What are you doing here? I need to talk, I said, stepping inside before she could stop me. Ryan wasn't home. The apartment was quiet to quiet. I looked around, noticing things I hadn't before. New furniture, a large TV, designer shoes by the door. None of it matched the constant emergencies they claimed to have. I heard from the insurance company, I said. They think the fire might have been started on purpose. Jessica's face stiffened for just a second. Just long enough. That's ridiculous, she snapped. Why would anyone do that? I watched her carefully. That's what I'm trying to understand. She crossed her arms. Are you accusing me? I'm asking questions. Her voice rose. You're being paranoid. Ever since Dad died, you've imagined people are out to get you. That hurt more than I expected. I turned toward the hallway and froze. My spare house key was hanging on a hook by the door. The same key I had asked her to return months ago. You still have it, I said quietly. She followed my gaze and shrugged. So, you gave it to me. I asked for it back. You forgot, she said quickly. Too quickly. I took a slow breath. Jessica, where were you the night of the fire? She rolled her eyes. Home, with Ryan. Where else? I nodded, pretending to accept the answer. But something was wrong. As I turned to leave, my foot brushed against a folder on the coffee table. Papers spilled out. I apologized and bent down to gather them, then stopped. They were financial documents. My name was printed across the top. Loan estimates. Property inquiries. A note in Jessica's handwriting. Sell after insurance clears. My heart pounded. I stood up slowly, holding the papers. Jessica's face went pale. Give those back, she said sharply. Why are you planning to sell my house? I asked. She lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. Answer me. Her eyes filled with anger, not guilt. Because you never needed it, she hissed. And we did. In that moment, I understood something chilling. The fire wasn't just about money. It was about removing me from the picture entirely, and I had a terrible feeling that if I hadn't walked away that night, I might not have walked away at all. I didn't confront her after that. I left the apartment holding those papers. My legs weak, but my mind sharper than it had been in years. Jessica didn't follow me. She didn't apologize. She didn't even try to explain. That silence told me more than words ever could. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the way her eyes had hardened when I mentioned the fire. Not fear, not confusion, anger, like I had disrupted a plan. The next morning, I went somewhere I hadn't visited since my husband's funeral. The old filing cabinet in my storage unit. Inside were years of documents I'd kept, just in case. Bank statements, tax records, copies of checks. I spent hours going through them. That's when I saw it. Large transfers, regular payments, thousands of dollars over the years. Some labeled as loan, others with no label at all. When I added everything up, my breath caught in my throat. I had given Jessica and Ryan over $180,000. And that didn't include furniture, appliances, emergency cash, or the credit card I had foolishly put in Jessica's name. I sat there on the cold concrete floor and laughed. Not because it was funny, because it finally made sense. That afternoon, I met with a lawyer. A quiet woman with kind eyes who listened without interrupting. As I told her everything, from the fire to the papers I found, when I finished, she folded her hands. You need to protect yourself. Immediately. From my own daughter, I asked. She didn't hesitate. Yes. She advised me to freeze my accounts, revoke any shared access, and document everything. Then she paused. If the fire was intentional, she said carefully, this goes beyond family issues. On my way out, she added something that made my stomach turn. Have you considered that they expected you to be inside the house? The thought hit me like ice water. That evening, I returned to the motel and checked my voicemail. There was one message from Ryan. Carol, you're being dramatic. Come home tomorrow. We'll talk. Bring the insurance paperwork. I deleted it. Instead, I went back to the ruins of my home. As I walked through the charred remains, something near the back wall caught my eye. Half burned, but intact. A small metal box. My heart raced as I pried it open. Inside were documents I didn't recognize. Not mine. Life insurance forms. But I wasn't the beneficiary. Jessica was dated 6 months before the fire. I sank to my knees. The fire, the money, the pressure to come home. It wasn't about helping me recover. It was about finishing what had already started. And suddenly, every unanswered call felt less like concern and more like urgency. I didn't go back to the motel that night. Instead, I drove until the city lights disappeared and parked outside a small 20-foot diner on the highway. I needed noise, people, anything to keep my thoughts from spiraling. The life insurance papers sat on the passenger seat beside me, sealed in a plastic folder. I hadn't imagined them. Jessica's name was there in black ink, clear as day. 6 months before the fire. I wrapped my hands around a cup of coffee and stared out the window, replaying every conversation from the past year. Every comment about my house being too much work. Every suggestion that I should simplify my life. And then something else clicked. 3 weeks before the fire, Jessica had insisted I update my will. Just in case, she'd said, smiling sweetly. You're not getting any younger. At the time, I thought she was being responsible. Now I felt sick. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my call history. There it was, an unanswered call from the night of the fire. Jessica had called me at 10:42 p.m. The fire had started at 10:45. My heart pounded. Why would she call me 3 minutes before my house went up in flames? I finished my coffee, hands trembling, and drove to the police station. At the front desk, I asked to speak to the detective handling my fire investigation. When he came out, I handed him the folder. The bank records, the messages, everything. He didn't say much as he flipped through the pages. But his jaw tightened. This isn't normal, he said quietly. And it isn't over. He told me not to contact Jessica or Ryan, not to confront them, and most importantly not to be alone, if I could avoid it. As I stood to leave, he added something that sent a chill down my spine. If they believed you were going to die in that fire, he said, they may still think you're a problem. I stayed with a friend from church that night, someone Jessica didn't know well. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Jessica. Mom, please come back. We're worried. This is getting out of hand. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. 3 dots appeared. Then another message came through. You're making things very difficult for us. That's when I understood. This wasn't fear. It was frustration. And whatever plan they had set in motion hadn't ended with the fire. The next few days passed in a blur. I followed the detective's instructions exactly. I didn't answer Jessica's calls. I didn't reply to her messages. And I didn't go anywhere alone. My friend Mary insisted I stay in her guest room, locking the doors every night like we were bracing for a storm. Meanwhile, the police worked quietly. They confirmed the accelerant. They traced the insurance policy. And then they found something else: security footage from a gas station, 2 blocks from my house. A familiar car pulled into frame just after 10 p.m. Jessica's. The detective didn't show me the video. He didn't need to. The look on his face said everything. She says she was home all night, he told me. That doesn't match what we're seeing. 2 days later, Ryan was brought in for questioning. He cracked within hours. According to the detective, Ryan hadn't planned anything. He had simply followed instructions. He admitted Jessica asked him to take care of it. He said she promised the insurance money would solve all their problems. And then came the part that made my stomach turn. Ryan admitted they believed I would be asleep when the fire started. I sat in silence as the detective spoke. She told him you always went to bed early, he said, that you wouldn't feel anything. The room felt smaller, colder. Jessica was arrested that evening. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She asked for a lawyer and avoided my eyes as they led her away. The fire wasn't the only charge. Attempted murder, insurance fraud, conspiracy, but the damage she'd done couldn't be listed on a charge sheet. At the preliminary hearing, Jessica finally looked at me. Not with guilt, with blame, as if I had ruined her life by surviving. Weeks later, the court issued a no-contact order. I was allowed to return to my property, though there was nothing left to return to. Standing there among the ashes, I realized something important. I was free. No more guilt. No more manipulation. No more fear disguised as family love. But freedom came with a cost. Because, as the case moved forward, more truths began to surface, truths about how long this betrayal had been building, and how close I had come to never telling this story at all. And one final revelation was still waiting, one that would change the rest of my life forever. The trial took nearly a year. In that time, I learned how quiet life becomes when the person who once controlled it is gone. No constant messages. No guilt-filled phone calls. No sudden emergencies that only I was expected to fix. Just silence. At first, that silence hurt. Then it healed me. In court, the evidence unfolded piece by piece. The gas station footage, the insurance policy, the bank transfers, Ryan's confession, text messages Jessica never thought anyone would read, where she complained about me being in the way, about how long I was taking. When the prosecutor read them out loud, Jessica stared straight ahead, expressionless. I couldn't recognize her anymore. The daughter I raised had been replaced by someone colder. Someone who saw her own mother as an obstacle instead of a person. Ryan testified against her in exchange for a reduced sentence. His voice shook as he described the night of the fire, how Jessica had planned every detail. How she told him exactly where to pour how she called my phone to make sure I was inside. That call, hearing it confirmed in open court, made my hands go numb. Jessica's defense tried to paint me as confused, forgetful, emotionally unstable. They suggested I imagined things, that grief and age had clouded my judgment. But facts don't forget. And neither did the jury. The verdict came on a quiet afternoon. Guilty. On all counts. Jessica didn't react. No tears, no apology. She simply turned and looked at me one last time. Her eyes were empty. When the judge read the sentence 25 years, I felt something unexpected, relief. Not because she was punished, but because she couldn't hurt anyone else again. After the trial, I sold the land where my house once stood. I didn't rebuild. I didn't want to live where someone had tried to erase me. Instead, I bought a small home near the coast. Somewhere peaceful. Somewhere anonymous. On my first night there, I sat on the porch listening to the waves, realizing how close I had come to losing everything, including my life. And how surviving had given me something I hadn't felt in decades. Choice. But just when I thought the story was finally over, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sentence, written in familiar handwriting, and the moment I read it, I knew healing was going to take longer than I ever imagined. I stared at the letter for a long time before opening it. My hands didn't shake this time. I had already faced the worst. Whatever words waited inside couldn't burn me the way fire once had. The handwriting was unmistakable. Jessica's. The sentence was short. No greeting. No apology. You took everything from me. I folded the paper slowly and set it down on the table. For a moment, the old guilt tried to creep back in, the familiar voice that used to tell me everything was my fault. That if I had just given more, forgiven more, stayed quiet longer, things would have been different. But that voice didn't have power over me anymore. I realized something important right then. I hadn't taken anything from her. I had survived, and survival, to someone who planned your end, looks like betrayal. I never wrote back. Instead, I walked outside and sat on my porch, watching the sun sink into the ocean. The air smelled like salt and freedom. For the first time in years, my life felt like it belonged to me. I started rebuilding in quiet ways. Morning walks, a small garden, coffee with neighbors who knew nothing about my past and didn't need to. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I stopped explaining myself. Some nights, the memories still came. The fire, the courtroom, the sound of my daughter's voice when she realized I wasn't coming back under her control. But those memories no longer owned me. I used part of the insurance settlement to start a small foundation, nothing fancy. Just a way to help seniors who had nowhere to go, the way I once had nowhere to turn. Every time I handed someone a warm meal or a safe place to sleep, it felt like reclaiming something that had been stolen. Not money, dignity. People often ask me if I miss my daughter. I miss the child she used to be. But I don't miss the woman who tried to erase me. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. Love should never cost you your safety, your peace, or your life. And no matter how old you are, it's never too late to choose yourself. I lost my home. I lost my family. But I found something far more powerful. My voice. And this time, I intend to keep using it. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to share where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's survival. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.